The new Superman just feels like Superman. So why did it take so long for a seemingly good Superman to come around? The fault lies completely with Zack Snyder. When Zack Snyder's Man of Steel hit theaters, I know that I was not alone in hoping that it would be a great movie. However, despite Snyder's ambitions to provide a grounded, modern take on the superhero, his approach ultimately missed the mark. In trying to craft a darker, more realistic Superman, Snyder arguably sabotaged the potential for Henry Cavill's Superman to become an iconic version of the character. By opting for a vision that deviated from the optimistic and heroic legacy that Superman had built over decades, Snyder not only failed to deliver the Superman that fans wanted, but also stunted Cavill's opportunity to define the character in a way that could resonate with audiences, and more importantly, his opportunity to have a sequel.
Do this, Superman can't do that, he can't kill Zod, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I'm like, it's hard for me to take that seriously after these superheroes can't get it up unless they go do some superhero action.
Right.
Because their sexuality is linked to their costume and their identity, you know,
Right.
and they're sort of turned on by their crime fighting, okay?
Superman, at his core, is a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in an often grim world. This is reflected in the iconic catchphrase, "Truth, Justice, and the American Way." Throughout his long comic book history, Superman has stood as an emblem of inspiration, selflessness, and moral clarity. Fans have come to love him not just because of his incredible powers, but because he embodies the best of humanity, an outsider who embraces the virtues of compassion and justice. The stories that surround him often focus on his humanity, his unwavering commitment to protecting the innocent, and his unyielding moral compass. However, in Snyder's reimagining, Superman is not the figurehead of hope he once was. Instead, he is a reluctant, often brooding figure, struggling to come to terms with his powers and place in the world. Man of Steel portrays Clark Kent as a man torn between his Kryptonian heritage and his desire to fit in with humanity.
Why am I so different from them?
His journey is defined more by isolation, confusion, and a lack of purpose than by the confident heroism fans expected. While the film certainly aimed for a more realistic portrayal of how someone with such godlike powers might struggle, it also stripped away the optimism and inspiration that have made Superman a beloved character for generations. Snyder's desire to infuse Man of Steel with a darker and more grounded tone was inherently problematic. While many superhero films had begun to embrace this more serious and mature approach, as evidenced by Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy. The issue with Snyder's vision is that Superman, unlike Batman, is not inherently a character who fits comfortably in a grim, realistic world. While Bruce Wayne is a human driven by trauma, vengeance, and guilt, Superman is a godlike figure with a greater sense of purpose and hope.
Here, there must be a reason for you to be here.
Yes, I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
For Snyder, however, the character's alien origins and overwhelming power seem to demand a more somber, even cynical exploration of the character. This clash between Superman's traditional traits and Snyder's darker take ultimately created a Superman who felt out of place in the world Snyder built. The result of this darker approach was a Superman who lacked the sense of joy and optimism that had always defined the character. Instead of delivering the heartwarming and awe-inspiring moments that fans had come to expect from a Superman film, Snyder's take focused on the difficulties and the consequences of Superman's actions. From the destruction of Metropolis in Man of Steel to the dark, nihilistic tone of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, Snyder's Superman came across as a reluctant and flawed hero, constantly questioning his role in the world. This shift not only created a disconnect with fans who were hoping for a more traditional portrayal of the character, but also effectively robbed Henry Cavill of the chance to create a truly iconic Superman. Cavill, a talented actor with the physical presence and charisma necessary for the role, was left to portray a Superman that felt restrained by the darker narrative imposed upon him. The emotional depth Cavill could have brought to the role was overshadowed by a version of Superman who, in many ways, felt lost, detached, and even destructive rather than heroic. The potential for a truly iconic Superman film was right at Snyder's fingertips. If Snyder had opted for a more balanced take on Superman, where the character's moral clarity and compassion were at the forefront, rather than solely focusing on the realism of a godlike figure among mortals, Cavill's Superman could have transcended the limitations placed on him. Rather than depicting Superman as a character caught between two worlds, Snyder could have emphasized the hero's role as an ideal to strive for, someone who represents the best aspects of humanity and the limitless possibilities of what one can achieve when they hold fast to their principles. In particular, the choices Snyder made in Batman v Superman further show how his darker take on Superman ultimately undermined the character. The film portrays Superman as a symbol of unchecked power and an agent of destruction. The film's centerpiece battle between Superman and Batman is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of Superman's character, a morally upright figure driven to violence, largely because of his perceived failings. The film positions Superman as a divisive figure whose very existence threatens the world, when in reality, Superman is often depicted as a source of unity and hope. Had Snyder taken the opportunity to explore Superman as a unifying, heroic force, rather than focusing on the darker consequences of his power, he could have delivered a film that resonated more with the essence of what Superman stands for. He could have explored his place in a modern world, while still keeping intact the core qualities that make Superman a symbol of hope and resilience. Instead, the approach Snyder took was ultimately a misstep, one that failed to harness the potential for a truly great Superman movie. Zack Snyder's vision for Superman ultimately failed to deliver what fans wanted, an iconic, inspiring, and hopeful superhero who represented the best humanity has to offer. By focusing on a darker, more realistic take, he undermined the fundamental qualities that have made Superman one of the most enduring and beloved characters in comic book history. Snyder's Superman was not the beacon of hope that fans had been hoping for, but rather a tortured, brooding figure who was more concerned with existential questions than with heroism. In doing so, he not only denied Henry Cavill the opportunity to create an iconic portrayal of Superman, but also robbed audiences of the chance to experience the kind of Superman story that could have inspired a new generation of fans. Ultimately, Snyder's darker vision failed to deliver a Superman movie that fans wanted, one that could have truly done justice to the character's legacy.
Do this, Superman can't do that, he can't kill Zod, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I'm like, it's hard for me to take that seriously after. These superheroes can't get it up unless they go do some superhero action.
Right.
Because their sexuality is linked to their costume and their identity, you know,
right.
and they're sort of turned on by their crime fighting, okay?